Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up, because today we're not just telling the story of an actor. We're diving headfirst into the legend of a man who turned all right, all right, all right into a philosophy, who danced with failure and fame in equal measure, and who somehow convinced the world that life itself can be lived like a movie. Matthew McConaughey. Now, you've heard the name. Maybe you know him as the smooth-talking guy leaning against a jukebox in a rom-com. Maybe you remember his haunting, fragile performance in Dallas Buyers Club. Or maybe you hear his voice when you think of Lincoln commercials, whispering something you can't quite define, but somehow feels like truth. But here's the catch. Matthew McConaughey's life isn't just a highlight reel of Hollywood. It's a patchwork of fact and myth, of late-night stories told under Texas skies, and of choices so risky they sound made up. Some of what you'll hear tonight is absolutely true. Some of it, well, let's just say McConaughey himself might raise an eyebrow, flash that mischievous grin, and let you wonder. Because his life is a frontier between truth and legend. So, pour yourself a glass of bourbon, lean back. Let's drive together through the dusty highways of Texas, the neon glow of Hollywood, and the quiet moments of doubt and triumph. This is the story of a man who decided that life wasn't about chasing fame. It was about chasing the green lights. And it all begins in a small Texas town in 1969. Longview, Texas. The year is 1969. America is watching the moon landing on black and white TVs, and in a modest hospital, James Donald and Mary Kathleen McConaughey welcome their youngest son into the world, Matthew David. Now, the McConaughey's weren't your picture-perfect suburban family. Jim, his father, was a former NFL hopeful-turned-pipe supplier, a man's man, rough around the edges, but with a booming laugh. His mother, Kay, was a teacher with fire in her veins, known to throw a frying pan if her boys crossed the line. Matthew grew up the youngest of three, with brothers Mike and Pat always close, sometimes too close. Their house was filled with chaos, discipline, and love, the kind of love that didn't coddle but demanded strength. McConaughey himself would later say, "In my house, you didn't get grounded. You got wrestled down by Dad, and then Mom told you why you deserved it." And yet, amidst that rugged upbringing, Matthew had a restless spirit. He wasn't the biggest kid, not the fastest, but there was something magnetic about him. Teachers would say he could hold the classroom just by telling a story about walking to school. One story goes that in 8th grade, Matthew accidentally filled in for a classmate in a school play. The classmate had stage fright, ran off, and in the chaos, young Matthew stepped up. He delivered a single line, but the way he tilted his head, the grin he flashed, it got the loudest laugh of the night. From that moment, whispers spread, "That McConaughey kid, he's got something." Whether or not that story is true doesn't matter. What matters is, even as a boy, McConaughey had a knack for turning small moments into something unforgettable. He was also curious. Books, music, people. He devoured biographies. He studied human behavior, and yet, if you asked him back then what he wanted to be, he'd have said, a lawyer. Acting wasn't even on the radar. But life, as you'll see again and again in this story, had other plans. By the time Matthew hit college, he was on track to become a lawyer. He was good with words, persuasive, charming in debate. It made sense. Law was stable, respected, his parents approved. And then Australia. In what would become one of the most pivotal detours of his life, McConaughey signed up for an exchange program and spent a year living in the land down under. Imagine it. A Texas boy dropped into the beaches, the slang, the wildness of Australia. It wasn't glamorous. He lived with a strict host family who enforced curfews, made him clean the yard, and expected him to adapt. He felt lonely. He journaled obsessively. He questioned himself. But that year planted the seed of independence and the idea that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't destined to spend his life in a courtroom. Back in Texas, he stumbled across a book that would change everything. Og Mandino's The Greatest Salesman in the World. It made him think maybe he could sell more than arguments. Maybe he could sell stories. So he did something radical. He switched his major to film. His parents weren't thrilled, but Matthew felt it in his bones. He wanted to tell stories not on paper, but on screen. And then came the grind. Commercial auditions, bit parts, student films, long nights waiting tables, long mornings wondering if he'd made a mistake. Legend has it that at one point he got a call from a casting agent, but lost the letter with the details. He found it weeks later, burned in a pile of trash outside his dorm. The role was gone, but the story stayed. A reminder that in Hollywood, luck is as fragile as paper. Still, he kept pushing, kept showing up, kept hustling. And then, one night in Austin, in a smoky bar, he met a director who would change his life. The director was Richard Linklater, and the project was Dazed and Confused, a coming-of-age film about teenagers in the 1970s. McConaughey wasn't even supposed to audition. He just tagged along with a friend. But when Linklater met him, he saw something, an easy confidence, a slow Texas drawl, a glint in the eye that felt timeless. Matthew landed the role of David Wooderson, a character who was older than the high school kids but still hanging around, chasing the glory days. It was a small role, just a few scenes. But oh, what scenes they became. Because one night, shooting a scene, Matthew improvised. He looked at the car, the girls, the night, and muttered, "All right, all right, all right." 3 words, off the cuff, unscripted. And yet, those words became the heartbeat of the film, and later, the heartbeat of his career. The film wasn't a blockbuster, but it became a cult classic. Critics noticed this new kid, this natural. Hollywood noticed. And most importantly, Matthew McConaughey noticed something about himself. When he stepped on set, he felt at home. There's a story, half legend, half truth, that at a test screening, an audience wasn't connecting with the film. Until McConaughey's first scene came on, his swagger, his rhythm, his sly delivery, they brought the theater to life. Linklater later said, "That kid saved the movie." Whether he really saved it or not, one thing was clear. A star was born, and Matthew McConaughey's life would never be the same again. By the early 2000s, Matthew McConaughey had Hollywood wrapped around his finger. He was tan, he was charming, and when he smiled, box offices lit up. Movies like The Wedding Planner, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, and Failure to Launch cemented him as the king of romantic comedies. He was the guy every woman wanted, the guy every man secretly wanted to be. Shirtless on magazine covers, walking red carpets with that swagger, Matthew was the face of Hollywood escapism. But here's the thing about playing the perfect guy in love stories. It pays well, but it boxes you in. McConaughey started to feel the weight of repetition. He once said, "I felt like I was eating the same meal every night. It was good food, but damn, I was hungry for something else." Still, audiences adored him. There were rumors about his relationships with co-stars, whispers of wild parties in Malibu, and paparazzi photos of him playing bongos, sometimes naked, at 2 in the morning. Some of those stories were true. Some? Well, let's just say they fit the legend. One story, possibly exaggerated, is that McConaughey turned down a $14 million paycheck for another rom-com because, as he allegedly told a friend, "If I take this role, I'll never get out of this cage." Instead, he packed his bags and disappeared for a while. Where did he go? Some say he wandered Africa, learning tribal dances under the stars. Others say he hid out in Texas, fishing and journaling, waiting for the right script to land in his lap. Whatever the truth, by the late 2000s, Matthew McConaughey had reached a crossroads. Keep cashing in as Hollywood's golden boy or risk it all for something deeper. And he chose risk. The industry didn't know it then, but Matthew was about to rewrite his story. First came The Lincoln Lawyer in 2011, a gritty legal thriller that reminded audiences and studios that McConaughey wasn't just a smile. He could hold a film on his shoulders, sharp and commanding. Then Mud in 2012, an indie film, quiet, soulful, with McConaughey delivering a performance that critics called his most vulnerable yet. And then Magic Mike. Yes, he played a strip club owner, but he did it with so much flair and depth that the performance stole the show. Suddenly, Hollywood was buzzing with a new word, the McConaissance. But the true crown jewel came in 2013, Dallas Buyers Club. Playing Ron Woodroof, an electrician diagnosed with AIDS in the 1980s, McConaughey lost 47 pounds for the role. His performance was raw, unflinching, heartbreaking. It earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor, and as if fate itself was scripting his life, that same year he starred in Christopher Nolan's Interstellar. From the dusty highways of Texas, he had traveled, at least on screen, to the edge of the galaxy. There's a legend that before agreeing to Interstellar, McConaughey sat with Nolan for hours, not talking about space or science fiction, but about fatherhood, love, and time. Nolan supposedly walked away saying, "This isn't a movie about science. It's a movie about being human." And Matthew is the man to carry it. Whether that meeting happened exactly like that or not, the result is undeniable. McConaughey had transformed. From rom-com poster boy to one of the most respected actors of his generation. The McConaissance wasn't just a career revival, it was proof that sometimes you have to burn the old script to write a better one. With the Oscar on his shelf and Hollywood at his feet, Matthew McConaughey could have chased blockbuster after blockbuster. But instead, he turned inward. He married Camila Alves, a Brazilian model and entrepreneur, in 2012. Together, they built a family, raising 3 children. In interviews, McConaughey often credits Camila with grounding him, with teaching him patience and humility. He launched the Just Keep Livin' Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to empowering high school students to live active, healthy lives. The philosophy came from his father's passing. It was Jim McConaughey's favorite phrase, "Just keep living." And then came his memoir, Green Lights, a book that wasn't so much a traditional autobiography as it was a journal of wisdom, stories, and philosophy. It became a bestseller filled with lines that made readers laugh, cry, and scribble notes in the margins. McConaughey also became a cultural voice. In 2021, rumors swirled about him running for governor of Texas. He gave speeches about unity, about finding common ground in a divided America. He never officially ran, but the idea of McConaughey as a politician was enough to make headlines around the world. And then there are the quieter, stranger stories, like the time he supposedly walked into a bar in Austin, challenged a group of strangers to a night of philosophical debate, and left at sunrise having convinced them all that life is not about balance, it's about rhythm. Whether true or not, that story fits. Because McConaughey has always been more than an actor. He's a thinker, a storyteller, a man searching for meaning beyond the screen. So, who is Matthew McConaughey, really? He's the kid from Longview, Texas, who once dreamed of being a lawyer. He's the college student who found himself in Australia. He's the young actor who turned 3 improvised words into a lifetime catchphrase. He's the rom-com heartthrob who walked away from millions because he wanted something more. He's the man who risked everything and won an Oscar. The father who reads to his kids at night. The philosopher who journals about green lights and red lights, about destiny and choice. And he's also the legend, the guy in the stories you're never quite sure are true. Did he really save dazed and confused in a test screening? Did he really live with tribes in Africa? Did he really win a debate in a smoky Texas bar about the meaning of life? Maybe, maybe not. But that's the beauty of Matthew McConaughey. His life is a blend of fact and fable, of flesh and myth. And in the end, maybe that's the lesson. Life isn't about knowing exactly what's true. It's about living in such a way that people tell stories about you, stories that inspire, entertain, and keep your spirit alive long after the credits roll. Matthew McConaughey, actor, philosopher, legend. All right, all right, all right. You've just listened to another story from StoryVault, a place where lives, legends, and moments are kept alive. If this journey spoke to you, if it made you think, smile, or see the world a little differently, do me a favor. Tap that like button and subscribe to the channel. Because here at StoryVault, there's always another story waiting to be told. And I'd love to share it with you. Until next time, keep your curiosity alive. And I'll see you in the next story.